Hello, my name is Chuck Wolfe. Over the years, I've worked in many different roles, including leading my own leadership consulting company since 1994. I've worked for and with some of the best companies and universities in the world, and have had the opportunity to work with government officials, military organizations, and public and private schools. I'm a leading expert and pioneer in emotional intelligence. Since 2009, I have been a volunteer hosting a radio show I created called The Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. I really enjoy making a difference in people's lives. The show is on award-winning community radio station, WPKN in Bridgeport, Connecticut. In recent years, Simsbury Community Television has been sharing my shows on their station and on YouTube. My sincere hope is that everyone who watches regularly will learn how to use the Emotion Roadmap in their own lives by listening to people who call in to get help with challenges at work, home, and in communities. To learn more, go to www.emotionroadmap.com. If you have a comment or question, email me at cjwolfe@cjwolfe.com. Thank you and enjoy the show.
And this is Chuck Wolfe. You're listening to WPKN. This is 89.5 FM in listener-supported Radio Land in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And I'm very glad to be here with you today. And I'm looking forward to talking with my community that's regular listeners. And I want to thank everybody that does listen regularly to the show. It's always a pleasure to be here with you. And this is a beautiful day in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And I wanted to say thank you to all the people who called in last week with the topic that I was talking about, which was how do you be an excellent team member? What does it take for you to show up in the workplace and be the kind of team member you want to work with? What does it involve in terms of the way you behave, the way you interact with others, the way you perform, the way you hold yourself accountable, the kind of standards you set for yourself, and the way you interact with others? So I'm hoping that we get more calls about that this week, because I actually want to share some of those things on the Public Radio Exchange, where I publish some of the work that I do regularly on this radio show. And again, for those of you who are just joining, it's the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. I'm Chuck Wolfe. I'm someone who has spent a lot of time over the years learning how to help people find meaningful changes in their lives that make positive differences around the idea of managing the way that they interact with others and managing what goes on inside ourselves. So if you've got something that you want to share with me about being an effective team member, that was the topic last week. I was just listening to the last week's show this morning. I went back and replayed it for myself, and really want to, again, thank the people that did call in. Leo called in, Sonia called in, Sarah called in, Donna called in. It was really a really great show. So thanks, everybody, for calling in. Also, there are times when people call this show for its main purpose, which is to introduce all of you to this concept that I created called the Emotion Roadmap. It's designed to take advantage of the new science of emotional intelligence, relatively new science. It's been with us since 1990 now. And the idea of what do we do with this knowledge that we're learning about emotional intelligence and emotional intelligence abilities, and how do we make it useful? And the roadmap is a way to make everything we deal with that has emotions that are powerful, that have to do with anything that's important to us. It helps us, the Emotion Roadmap helps us to think about what we are feeling. And if what we're feeling is fine, we just move forward. But if what we're feeling is potentially an obstacle in the way of our success, in the way of possibly helping ourselves and others to move forward on something important, wherever there are high consequences, it's always useful, I find, to think about what are the emotions involved and how does my emotion contribute to what I'm trying to get done. One of the key concepts I learned years ago working with the pioneers in emotional intelligence is that you always are informed by your emotions. They're always important to understand. Emotions always carry information, data that's really important to us to understand in terms of the way that we we are protected. Emotions are part of our evolutionary system that helps to protect us. But once in a while, in fact, maybe often, in fact, the emotions we feel are not as helpful as we'd like them to be. The emotions we feel may even be an actual obstacle to what we're trying to get done in the moment or long term. Like, let's say we have a large organization that we manage, as an example, in the workplace. And we've had some ideas about the need to change, to transform ourselves into a better, a more powerful, more engaging workforce, to create a synergy and systems that help us to develop new products to keep us ahead of the pack in terms of being out there advanced in terms of what we can contribute to society, and also help all of our organization investors, all of our organization members, their families, everyone connected to us to feel good about ourselves. What are the things that we can do to make that happen? And we think about change, perhaps on a fairly large scale, but we know that that change is going to cause people a moment of uncertainty, of doubt, of wondering, where do we fit? How do I go forward with this organization? All of these changes, do they signal something good, or is it something to be afraid of? If I'm really talented and I have opportunities elsewhere, should I take advantage of my talent and move on? Or should I stick it out and stay with this organization? How do you, as a leader of an organization, address all the uncertainty, all the doubt, all the fear that gets introduced when change is announced in your organization? And the emotion roadmap helps you to plan for emotionally how you want everybody to feel. That doesn't mean magically you can make them feel a certain way, but by asking yourself, what do I want people to feel? How do I minimize emotional resistance? How do I create synergy and support for what we want to do moving forward? What do I know about all the key people in my organization that I need to message them in a way that says to them, you've got a place here. You're part of the new vision. You're part of what's going to make this organization thrive. And change is good. It's healthy. And you are invited and welcome, and I want you to be part of it. How do we communicate that in a way that's satisfactory to the people that we most definitely want to keep? But even for those who are just regular workers who just perform adequately and we want to keep them too, what do we say to them? How do we make them feel that they're safe as anyone can be organizationally around jobs? Psychological safety is a key concern, and it's really important. It's important in the sense that people need to know that they can ask questions, that they can be authentic, that they can share information with others that might be controversial or even confrontational at times, but needs to be shared without fear of repercussion. How do we create those kinds of changes in the workplace? So I'm hopeful that in today's conversation with those of you who are listening, again, thank you, all of you are regular listeners. Thanks for tuning in. And again, if you're a new listener, the show is called The Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. It's about giving you more power, more agency to be able to control how you're feeling and how to influence others' feelings in a positive way. The show is designed to make life better for people. So one of the things that I wanted to see if people would like to call and talk about is, as a team member, if you've ever been a team member or currently a team member in the workplace, what do you think makes for a great team member? Perhaps it's someone you know, you can think of, you can describe them in some detail, and I'll ask you questions to try and pinpoint what is it about that person that you feel makes them a great team member. Or it's yourself. It's some things you've learned over the years that you feel make you a really effective and excellent team member. So I would love to hear people who have ideas about that. 203-336-9756. And also, the reason the show exists is to be able to teach people how to use the emotion roadmap. Essentially, the roadmap is a set of 4 questions based on multiple theories that I've put together in a very interesting and innovative way that generates more control over your own emotions and more ability to influence others. The key questions that I ask to help people with their own emotions and with influencing others are the following. 1, what is it you are currently feeling? And if what you're currently feeling isn't helpful, what would be ideal to feel? That's 2. What would be ideal to feel? 3, how do you get from what you are currently feeling to what's ideal to feel? The concept of a roadmap is how do you get from one place to another? If I'm trying to get from Bridgeport to Boston, do I take a bus? Do I take the train? Do I drive? How do I get there? If I'm trying to get from anxious to confident, what are some ways I know that I can move myself from anxious to confident? How do I do that? So moving from one emotion to a more helpful or more ideal emotion is the key to the roadmap. Most of us feel like whatever it is that's going on in our lives, whatever it is we're feeling, we have to just deal with the feelings, sometimes just push through the feelings that we have, even though those feelings aren't helpful for what we're trying to get done. But the science of emotional intelligence teaches us that it is possible to understand the root cause of the feelings we're having, to value the information those feelings are providing, but also to move on from those feelings, to often be able to even change those feelings. But if we can't change those feelings, we can change what we're saying to ourselves about those feelings. We can change the self-talk, the narrative. And also, we can potentially, at times, build what I like to call an emotional firewall. Just like computers protect you from viruses or malicious content of some kind, an emotional firewall can put in place sort of a wall that postpones a feeling that you have to deal with. When someone perhaps in your family is hurt or sick or lost a job or something has happened that creates very unpleasant feelings associated with that circumstance. And yet feeling that in the moment during the course of a particular day when you have other major issues to contend with isn't helpful. How can you sort of set that emotion inside a container of some kind with an emotional firewall that holds it off, at least till the end of the day, while you deal with whatever it is that's in front of you that is causing you to focus and need your attention? So all those things are possible. And in helping you use the emotion roadmap, when somebody calls in, they've got a challenging situation in their life, at work, at home, in their communities, somewhere in their lives, something is challenging, they're uncertain about, they're stuck, they don't know how to proceed. I find often when that's happening to people that are smart, and I only have smart people listening to my radio show and listening to WPKN, I think when that happens, a lot of times you feel like if you look hard and you pay attention to, there's emotions that are complicating that situation for you. They're either internal to you or you're worried about the emotional impact of something you might have to say or do with someone else. And smart people who get stuck often are stuck because we aren't really taught a whole lot about how to deal with challenging emotional situations. Fortunately, there's some efforts underway in lots of new schools in recent years where they're learning about social and emotional competencies. And I think that has tremendous potential to help people be far more intelligent about their emotions than many of us who grew up before those programs were available in schools. But some of us had very good emotionally sound parenting. We had parents who really got how to manage their own emotions and were able to manage emotionally their relationships with others very effectively. But that's not necessarily most of us, okay? If we were lucky, we had that in our background and we've learned how to do this for ourselves and we're good at it. But a lot of people struggle with this. And so the show is about teaching you what I've conceived of and developed. I was called to work in the 1990s with the pioneers in emotional intelligence, becoming a pioneer myself because I found that lots of people wanted to tell you about what your emotional abilities are, or at least inform you or test you or assess you to give you some perspective on that. But not a lot of people we're able to help you know what to do with them differently than what you were doing already. Now, certainly there are programs out there like conflict management, influence programs, communications programs, many of which have been rebranded and call themselves emotional intelligence. And I don't fault people for that, because I think in many ways that is helpful in being more emotionally intelligent, to know what are the ways we've learned over the years how to influence others, to understand, like psychologists understand, how emotions work, to know how to use emotional understanding to help guide us to be more effective. So there are things out there that we could call, or at least are related to emotional intelligence. But that's not the same as what I teach with this emotion roadmap. It's really innovative. And it's based on this concept that if what you are feeling isn't helpful, just simply ask yourself, what would be ideal to feel instead? What would be ideal to feel? And curiously, our brains are wired in a way that we ask ourselves a question, our brain tries to answer it. So if I ask myself, how do I want to feel instead of how I am feeling? And I come up with, I want to feel inspired. I want to feel motivated. And I'm not feeling that way right now. What do I know about me from any past experience I've ever had where I was feeling uninspired and I was able to actually become inspired? What did I do back then? Was there anything in my past, in my experience, that actually is a strength of mine that I just haven't really thought about in a while that I could use in this instance? And I help people with that. So if you've got something in your family, in your workplace, in your community, where you are struggling with something, a situation that you're uncertain about how to handle, and you want to ask about it, like Leo did last week when he asked about being uncertain about having got a very senior job in an organization, and he was worried about the Peter principle. This is just an example of what people call about sometimes. And he was worried that sometimes you rise in an organization. The Peter principle is you rise to a point where you got promoted until you actually couldn't do the job. That was the Peter principle. But he wasn't really in that spot, but he felt that way a little bit because there were certain things, even though he didn't lie about anything in his resume or any of his experiences, he earned that job. But in coming into that job, there was some technical and functional things he really didn't know how to do. And he didn't want to go and tell people, or at least many people, that he didn't know how to do it because, hey, we hired you for this job because we thought you could figure out how to do these things. So we talked a bit about the idea of it's important in organizational life to understand, as an effective team member especially, that when you are unable to complete something that's key to your organization's success, you have to let people know that. You can't be afraid to tell people that. You have to do it in a way that says, these are the things that I'm understanding about this. This is what I'm looking at. Here are some things I'm considering, but I really could use someone who's very knowledgeable about this functional area or this technical expertise to come in and visit with me a bit to help me make sure I'm picking the right choice here. I think if it's presented in a way where you sound competent, you sound confident, but you recognize an area where you need help, that is an effective team member. That should be welcomed in every organization. People shouldn't have to pretend they know how to do something for fear of being found out. Anyway, so the idea is if you've got something going on in your life that you feel like you want to call about, let me give you the number again, 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. The Emotion Roadmap is a set of questions, first based on whatever your situation is, hearing about that first, and then asking, how are you feeling? Is there anyone else that's key? How is he or she or they feeling? How would you want to feel yourself and any key other people? How would you want them to feel? How do we get from what you are feeling to what you think would be more ideal to feel? And then of the strategies we talk about, which ones are you really willing to execute, to do? Are you willing and are you able to do a particular strategy? At which point I What I talk about and what I describe is you have an emotion-based plan, and that's unique to the emotional intelligence space in terms of helping people learn how to do something different, is by asking you to plan emotionally what you want to have happen. People don't normally do that. And I teach people how to do it. And it's incredibly helpful, is what I found over the years. Also, if you don't have something like that to talk about, but you have some thoughts about what it means to be an effective team member, what you think an effective team member is, what you've seen, what you've experienced, either yourself or somebody you can think about who you thought was a great team member, what is it they did that was powerful enough for you? At some point, I'm collecting all these things. I just think it's really useful to put them up there and say, hey, for anybody that wants to know what it means to be an effective team member, here's something on Public Radio Exchange that came from Chuck Wolfe and the listeners at WPKN, to the listeners to the Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel. So I'd love for you to be a part of that. So if you got something you'd like to share, 203-336-9756. And I'll give you a minute. So I don't have anyone calling at the moment, but if you're worried about calling, I mean, please share what you got. Don't worry about it. Because what I find is sometimes people have a sort of a hard time explaining exactly what they want to say, but I'll help you with that. Because again, this is a community-based radio show, and the idea is we help each other. And so if you've got something that you think might help somebody be a more effective team member, let me know. I'll give you something, a proud moment, something I can share is, I have 3 daughters. They all do good work. I'm proud of all of them. One of them just received a note that she shared with us, the family of a family chat on WhatsApp. And she just shared a note saying, she just got a lovely note from someone that is part of one of her team that said how thankful she is to have my daughter as her leader, because she is so empathic. She is so supportive and has demonstrated a real concern for the people on the team. And this person was just saying how appreciative that she was to have my daughter as her leader. And what a proud moment for me, just to be able to share that with you all. So that was nice. I saw that this morning. Okay, anything else? Folks that make for a better team member. And then I'll pick a different topic because something else I do want to talk about as well. But I'd love to see if there's anybody else who would like to call in about being a team member. 203-336-9756. Well, okay. At this point, I don't have anyone calling about that. And I don't have anybody calling about something that they want to ask for help with. By the way, I know it's hard to call a radio station, but when you do need some help and you have somebody who's offering some advice for free, maybe it's only worth what it costs you. But a lot of people feel like they get help because this idea of emotion-based planning is something most people don't think about. And if I can help you with that, a lot of times people call up and they feel somewhat concerned, sometimes even feeling a little helpless. And by the end of the call, they often feel very hopeful, that they feel like they got a plan, a chance of something actually being successful where they were really stuck before, they didn't know what to do. So again, give me a call if you've got something along the lines that you'd like to share, that you want to take advantage of the time I'm on the radio today. 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. All right. Well, one of the other things I wanted to chat about today, and it's a topic that doesn't really get much attention. Most of the conversation in the management literature and the business literature is about leadership and management. And it should be, because those are the key determinants of whether or not organizations succeed is how effective people are in being leaders and in being managers. Leaders and managers sometimes are involved with similar kinds of things. Leaders and managers both want to pay attention to the development of the people below them. Both want to pay attention to effective planning and monitoring of plans. But managers usually take more of a role on the day-to-day managing of plans. Supervisors on the details involved with plans, team leaders even closer details at times, whereas leaders tend to be a little bit more on the strategic side. If they're very high up in the organization, a lot more on the strategic side, which is looking holistically at how the organization operates, the contributions their particular area might make, and how they can be effective in moving the organization in a direction that the organization isn't currently going in, but would benefit the organization for all kinds of reasons. But one of the things that doesn't really get talked about very much is what makes for a good follower. What does a leader look for in a follower? If you want to be someone who's thought of as a really hard worker, someone who is an effective organization member, good on a team, good independently, constantly being accountable and responsible for what it is that they're assigned, doing it well, doing it on time, doing it within budget. Well, what is it that leaders look for from followers? Because I think we go into the workplace and we have our own way of doing things. And sometimes we're very good at understanding what someone is asking us to do, and we're very clear on that one leader isn't the same as another leader, and that different leaders are looking for communication from us as individuals in different ways, not the same way. Some people really don't mind getting text from somebody who works for them. Other people like getting text from them. And some people think, you got something to say to me, come say it. Or call me. I don't want to get text. I'm old school. I want to talk to you. So I think it's important to understand who the leaders are that we work for, and to understand that there's parts of us that are responsible for our experience in the workplace. It isn't always about other team members, and it certainly isn't always about our leader. Leaders have a tremendous impact on what we experience in the workplace, but we influence how they deal with us. What are the ways that you've seen over the years that have informed you about what it takes to be the kind of team member a leader wants in their team? What does it take? I'll give you a minute to think about that. The number to call if you've got some ideas is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. Well, one of the things that I'll say about this is we have recently, some of us anyway, have been watching the Olympics. Some of you may have watched the Olympic men's basketball team. And two players on the men's Olympic basketball team were Drew Holiday and Derek White. And they are two of the same players that are the two starting guards for the Boston Celtics, a professional basketball team in Boston. If you don't know the National Basketball Association and you're not a sports fan, the key thing I want to tell you doesn't really involve sports so much as it does any kind of team. One of the people who called me last week is a woman named Sarah. And Sarah said she had found over the years that when she goes to work in the morning, if she focuses on leading with her heart and not with her ego, life is good. She didn't get into it, but I suspect that she's had times in her life where when she led with her ego, life was tough. Now, what does that mean to you as you're listening? Well, in the world of basketball, and in the world in general, in the workplace, one of the things I've discovered as a consultant to organizations is that a key skill, a very important need that organizations have, is for every person in the organization to be as clear as possible on their role and their responsibilities. Think about it for a minute. Be as clear as possible on roles and responsibilities. And I mentioned to you what Sarah mentioned on my show last week, to lead with heart and not with ego. Now, for a number of years, personally, I found it hard to watch National Basketball Association. As much as I grew up loving watching the Boston Celtics, I've been a fan ever since I've been a young kid. And I'm old, so I've been a fan for a long time. But I've been a fan for a number of Boston teams, but the Celtics are one of my favorite teams. But even with the Celtics, I found it hard sometimes to watch NBA basketball because for a while at least, it seemed everybody on the team wanted to make the highlight reel on ESPN. What does that mean? That means that ESPN, because they want people to watch their station, their television station, or listen to their radio station, they want to talk about outstanding plays. Outstanding plays. Somebody from the foul line, which is a ways away from the basket, leaped up in the air, spun around, and put the ball in the basket from above the basket. Amazing, wonderful play. And ESPN would show that on TV a bunch of times during the course of the day. And anybody that was a fan would hear from some other fan, did you see so-and-so make that play? And you would try to get on ESPN. Now you can go to the internet and see if you can see it, something that was recorded, or you'd watch the station and see if it came up because, boy, you wanted to see that great play too. And it became all about individual great plays, not about team, not about winning, not about a team making an outstanding contribution because they were a team, not because of any one individual. So the recent performance of the Boston Celtics, which were the National Basketball Association champions this year, had a lot to do with these same two people that were the guards on the Olympic team this year that helped the Olympic team win a gold medal. That's Drew Holiday and Derek White. And I thought when Sarah told me last week on my show about leading with her heart and not with her ego, that was representative of how I saw, and I think many people saw, the contributions of Drew Holiday and Derek White to the Celtics basketball team. And what I mean was they were able to leave their egos behind. They didn't need to fill the stat sheet. What that means is they didn't need to have the most points. They didn't have to have the most assists. They didn't have to have the most blocks or the most steals. What they needed to do was what the organization needed from them, which was to find ways to get the ball, the basketball, to the people who were open on the team, who were excellent shooters. And sometimes when you have two people who are operating without egos, in a sense, and of course they have egos, but without focusing on their own ego and just really doing whatever they can to help the team to win, it's contagious. What I mean by contagious, it means other people begin to pick up, hey, anytime I pass to either Drew or Derek, I know I'm going to get the ball back if I'm in a position to have the ball in my hands and have an open shot. I don't have to worry that one of them is just going to keep the ball and somehow make it about them. That's a concern in basketball. And that's a concern in real life in any kind of team. if I turn it over to one of the people on my team and I never get it back, and they make it about them and not about the team, I don't want to give the ball to them, metaphorically. I never see it again. It doesn't come back to me. They don't operate in a way that creates success for the team. So when you have people that truly are committed and understand that their role and responsibility on the team is to be egoless, is to do whatever it takes to create a win on a team, then other members of the team, their egos are less than they might be otherwise. Now, part of what makes it a really effective scorer in basketball is that lots of times people have to have an ego that says, I am a shooter. When I'm open, I shoot. I might miss 7 times in a row, but I know my abilities. I know that I'm counted on in this team to be a shooter, and I need to shoot when I'm open. And I need to be confident when I do that. I can't be second-guessing myself. So I do need to fill the stat sheet with the number of shots I take, and hopefully most of them go in, or many of them go in any way. But that's my role and responsibility. So I think one of the key things that make for effective team members and for effective followers to be people that people love to have on their teams, to coach, to lead, are people who understand and appreciate what their roles are, pay attention to those roles, and are supportive of the other people on the team, and recognize that team is about all of us together, not me as an individual. So I think that's a really important concept. So anyway, I wanted to tell you about that because I wanted to explain the idea of excellent followers start with knowing what are clear roles and responsibilities for myself and for all the other people that are part of the team that I'm on that exists to perform a certain function that requires all of us working together to be an effective team. Anybody else want to share something? Again, 203-336-9756. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Hey, Chuck, this is Dwayne. We chit-chatted a couple of times years ago.
Nice to hear from you, Dwayne. How you doing?
If I was doing any better, I'd have a problem, Chuck.
Good to hear.
Now, listen, I want to go the other way. I feel so blessed that I never had to be on a team or a group. I always like to work independently.
Okay.
How does that sound?
Well, I think if you know who you are, right,
Yeah.
and you know what you value, and you can be successful doing that. Dwayne, I've worked for myself for a lot of years, too. I actually love working for myself.
Isn't it great? You don't have to answer to anybody. You set your standards and your goals, and you just go ahead and go forth with the day, and you complete your goals. You don't have to depend on somebody else to bring your team down or your group down. You know how it works.
I love the idea that when I wake up in the morning, it's about me getting up and out of bed and being motivated to do whatever I need to do without worrying about what anybody else's messages are to me or to anybody else. I love that. I really do. I get it.
And I was thinking, you had me reminiscing with my youth. And I remember growing up, I loved being in a like Pop Warner. I was on the first Pop Warner team in town, and football in high school a little bit. But as the years progressed, I always thought to myself, I'm an independent thinker. I mean, even I like playing chess. Again, that's one-on-one. Tennis, one-on-one. Doubles, I hate doubles. I never figure out where the hell to go on the court. So I love that sense of self-dependency, the self-assurance, and just not having to depend on other people in a group. Well, how many stories have you heard where people are in a group, a committee, and they didn't get their raise or their bonus because of one guy or two guys, the sales didn't go through. You didn't make enough money. We don't have to worry about that. We make our own breaks.
Dwayne, that's really a beautiful statement. It's funny that you say that because, I talk a lot about teams and I help a lot of people succeed inside organizations, and I've made my living that way for a lot of years. I also really, really value the experience of being on my own. And, it's funny because not everybody feels like they're able to just step out on their own. So what was it in your life that caused you to, did you ever work for anybody else, or did you always go into your own ventures?
Oh, no, I work for a world famous parcel delivery service.
Okay.
Again, you're working on your own. You're independent all day.
Right.
You're not in a group per se. There's
Right.
nobody really to answer to unless you do something prohibitive or something.
Yeah, actually, my dad was a truck driver. He drove for the Boston Globe, the New York Times, and some other Boston papers. And he too. I mean, you had to come into work and get the truck loaded. I used to love to go with him because it was fun. We were out driving all around the country delivering newspapers. So it was a very independent lifestyle in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I thought it was marvelous. I'm 70. I retired at 55. I had 32 years in with the companies. And I mean, what a life. I mean, that business of not having to answer to anybody per se. If I ever had to work inside in an office or a group, I'd probably be in Creedmoor right now. How about you?
I did it for a number of years.
Maybe not Creedmoor.
I actually worked for Exxon for a few years, and then I worked 10 years for the Hartford. And you know what, Dwayne, honestly, for me at least, some of those experiences really helped me to be independent and do what I do. So so I think it was, I don't look back and say, I wish I'd done anything different over the years. There was some moments and times.
Regrets.
Yeah, there's some moments and times where I thought, I don't want to be here. Or when people were going, like the one of the toughest things I experienced was one time we went through a downsizing that wasn't based on anything to do with the business. It was some projections that were going to happen 3 or 5 years out. You know, the strategists and the economists were saying, hey, we can't afford to have this size organization anymore because of what's coming. But economists and strategists are right about half the time and wrong about half the time. And so it was really hard for me to go through and help be part of helping to lay people off during that time. That really soured me at that point on
I can believe that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, I'm the one that talked to you, or I think I sent you an email. You were asking for suggestions how to promote your show, and I suggested that huge resource right down there at PKN.
The promotion, right?
Remember, you wanted to get your...
Yeah. You said, do something with PKN. And I did. I took your advice.
Good.
I don't know if you ever hear it because the radio station doesn't come through where I live. So the only time I'm able to get it is when I'm closer to the radio station that I get to listen. But the promo was fun to do. Yeah. One of my friends, Lou Pomalis, who actually got me on the show many years ago, he helped me create a promo on that. So that was, thank you for that.
See,
I appreciate
there's just so much talent, and you have all the equipment right there. I mean, that was just a good thought.
No, that was great. I appreciate you helping out. I do remember that. Absolutely. Yeah,
all right, Chuck, I just thought I'd illuminate your afternoon a little bit, and I'm listening. Have a good show.
Thanks a lot, Dwayne. Nice talking to you.
Right, yep.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. That's what I mean about being part of a community. It's nice, you get help from people, and hopefully I'm helping you when you call in, you got something you want to talk to me about. So again, we got a little bit of time left. The number is 203-336-9756. So does anybody want to talk about the benefits of working inside an organization? By the way, my 3 daughters, my wife, they all worked in organizations, and they all have done really well in organizations. Thank goodness, So I just haven't personally, I found that being on my own and being independent and being able to help other people to stay in organizations, funny way to make a living when I'm on the outside of it. But I'm really smart about helping people understand what's going on and ways to be more effective in how they approach and deal with things. So if you've got something that you'd like some help with, 203-336-9756. Well, I want to thank you, Dwayne, for being the one caller today. Maybe we'll get a call before the end of the show. I do wish if you do have something you'd like to talk to me about that you don't wait any longer, because if you call like in about 5 more minutes, I probably won't have much time to talk to you. So if you've got something that you think you'd like some help with or just want to share, please do it in the next couple of minutes so that we actually get it recorded. 203-336-9756. Okay? So I was talking about being a follower in an organization, and it is challenging to try and figure out how to do this well. I think it's not easy to find ways to have people understand what you're trying to do It's also problematic sometimes if you have a style that's different than another person's style. And what I mean by that is there are people with values that are often similar to your own. And then it seems like there are people that, why would you care so much about that? That have values that are very different than your own. Let me give you an example. So when I was first in organizational life, I had mentioned I had worked for the Hartford for 10 years. And one of the things I was learning about was this idea that people have different styles. Now, I thought when you get to be in a position of authority and leadership in organizations, that one of the things that I understood about that was that you become very, very interested in knowing if there's something that others in the organization have as an idea that will help to create more successful attainment of goals. If you're in a commercial organization, it's profitability, but in any organization, it's the attainment of goals. So how do you share information with senior leaders? So I thought, well, every senior leader's got to care about action items, things that are going to make business better, organizations better, somehow, some way. But one of the things that struck me was in the Hartford, I came to understand that at least one of the people in the organization that was very senior, a guy I really liked a lot, a fellow named Tony Lubomir, he was the head of underwriting at the Hartford at the time I worked there. On the property and casualty side, there's life and there's property and casualty. They're all insurance, but they're very different. Anyway, Tony was somebody who cared about analysis and detail. He was an underwriter, and underwriters live in the land of analysis. They are constantly looking to understand the analytics, the data that comes in about risk on automobiles in Connecticut, on certain areas of Connecticut. Are there more accidents than in other areas? If there are more accidents in Bridgeport than there are in Stamford or in Hartford, then probably we need to ask for a higher cost on insurance because we are going to be paying out more in Bridgeport if the data tells us that there are more accidents happening in Bridgeport. Or if there were less accidents in Bridgeport than the other places, then the insurance would be lower. And they do this in underwriting to try and create a reasonable level of profitability. Now, you can argue what's reasonable, but when it all starts out, you can have years where insurance companies don't have any accidents, no real claims of any major concerns. And so they are very, very profitable in a year like that. And then everybody says, well, the insurance companies are making too much money. But for the following year, same insurance company, same insurance, same insured customers, but there's all kinds of events. There's hurricane damage. We just had a microburst in Simsbury. I talked a bit about it last week. It was a microburst. I mean, I'd heard about it, but I'd never experienced it. It's like a mini tornado. In 5 minutes, there was hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage in my own street. And a couple streets over, there was nothing. But again, insurance companies may find themselves with a whole host of major storms and damage that all of a sudden they have a big loss that year. Nobody's asking them, nobody's feeling sorry for them when that happens. But my point is that you try to take averages over the years and make whatever seems to be is reasonable pricing. It's really hard to get flood insurance these days in certain areas. Fire insurance in California, it costs a fortune if you live in a zone that they consider that there's a fairly high probability that a fire might take place somewhere near you. So these are things that aren't just arbitrary; they're based on analytics. And so when I thought about how do I approach Tony about a proposal I had on leadership development, I didn't approach him the same way I approached another person who was in charge of operations who was driven to achieve things. He was a senior operations manager, and I needed to come in with him and saying, I know how to save money and make money by such and such. That's how I had to lead. With Tony, I had to come in and say, I know that I've done the analysis and the detailed information that I want to present to you, I think will lead you to the same conclusion I want to share with you at the end. But here's what I want to present in terms of analysis. I needed to lead differently depending on who the other person was. And so that's what I mean about understanding within teams. We have people, some who care about action items. That's their main focus. It's not that they don't care about the other, but that's their major focus. That's what they want to hear. That'll get their attention. Others who want to know that you've done your due diligence, you've done your homework, you've been very thoughtful about what you've prepared. And then others who are very focused on the human factor, on the people who work there, on any change or any kinds of new organizational structure or new systems. How is it going to impact the people in place? How do we prepare people? How do we get them ready? How do we think about them emotionally? How do we become more supportive? So there are people that if I was going to approach them, I'd start with, I have some ideas about change. I want to talk to you about, first of all, I think there's minimal impact on these people, but there will be some impact here in this part of the organization. But I think I've got this covered, and I can share that with you. But I just want you to know I've thought about all these parts of the organization and the people within those structures, and I think this is going to work out. But now let me tell you about what it is I want to share with you. Because in talking to a person who cares about the people, if I make them feel assured that I have given consideration to what's most important to them, then they're much more open to hear what I want to tell them. If I talk to the person like Tony, I wanted to make sure I had prepared a very detailed, thoughtful, analytic approach in opening up to say, I've thought about the analytics. I've done my due diligence and the data collection and the analysis, and this is why I want to present to you what I'm about to present. And for this senior operations person, I want to tell you about, hey, this is what I think I found a way to make us more money, to save us more, be more cost effective. So I have a way to address profitability. And you want to think about how you lead with different people based on styles. But how do you talk to them? Those are senior people. But within your own departments, you have people that care about different things. And so when you're working with them collaboratively on a project team or somehow working with them, you recognize that there will be people that will slow you down, if you will. You might think about them slowing you down because they keep asking, are we working on the right thing? Why do you say that? Well, I don't see the data. I don't see the support. Why do you think this is the way to go? And there are others who are saying, look, enough already with the questions about data. At some point, you got to make a decision. And I'm saying it's time to decide. We don't have more time to do more research. We've done this much research. This is what the research we've done suggests. We certainly could spend more time doing more research, but we don't have that time. And that's how the person who wants to do something quickly almost always feels. And then somebody else is saying, but what about the people? I mean, what you're saying sounds like it makes sense, but our people don't have those skill sets. How are we going to get everybody right? And so you'll hear all kinds of things that suggest what people care most about when you're trying to understand the dynamics of the team that you're on. Okay. So I've been talking a lot about teams, and I'm sorry I didn't get more phone calls from you about teams. Dwayne, I want to thank you for calling about just being off on your own and doing it alone. I've enjoyed that myself a lot. So I won't be back with you until the following month. I'm on the first and second Wednesdays of the month. I hope you enjoyed listening. This is Chuck Wolfe. You've been listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And if you want to go to the Public Radio Exchange, I am going to post in the next few days the last week's show, because I had a lot of callers talking, as I said, about what I thought was some really good examples of what it means to be an effective team member. And if you're interested in what some of the listeners to WPKN had to say about that, you will find that under the Emotion Roadmap on Public Radio Exchange, and then look up Team Excellence. That's what I'll call it, Team Excellence. Okay. All right. So again, the show is about taking the wheel and controlling how you feel. I hope I've given you some ideas over the course of today's hour, just to let you know that there are times when you can do emotional planning, where you can plan emotionally what you want to have happen. And partly it involves understanding your roles and responsibilities, being really clear about that. And secondly, it involves understanding who's on the team with you. How are they like you? How are they different than you? What do they need from you? And while we didn't talk about it a whole lot, I think being a good team member is helpful in being a good follower. As you think about it, I would like to come back. I'm not going to leave this topic. I hope perhaps I get more callers and people get a chance to think about, what does make for somebody being an effective follower? What do leaders love about the people that work for them? And maybe it's easier to talk about what they don't like, but I always like to focus on things that are somewhat upbeat and take people to a better place. So that's pretty much it for me. I'm on the first and second Wednesdays of each month from 12 to 1 p.m. on the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. So you all take care. Have a good couple of weeks, and I'll be back with you in September. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.